Hi, and welcome to the halachic path of the Ger Toshav of today. We're going to be going over the thread of halacha of the Ger Toshav of today. The point of this class is to show that historically in Torah, there has always, does always mean sometimes? Or does always mean always?
Always.
There has always been a kosher, viable path of Ger Toshav, whether in times of the temple, before the temple, after the temple, in exile, yesterday, today, tomorrow, Jubilee, non-Jubilee, and on a random Tuesday in 1902. There's always been a path of Ger Toshav. Always. 100% applicable and viable. It never changes. Ever. What complicates it are almost like different orbits coming in and out of its orbit. And those moments in history or avenues in Torah can be confusing. Let's not be confused anymore. Now, I'm going to call what the halacha is by name at any point in this lecture, class, shir. Never deviate from your mind what I'm calling the halacha, the Raavad. Okay, say that at home watching this. Say it right now. The Raavad. The Raavad is the halacha.
The Raavad is the halacha.
This is, and I will show in this shir today, it really is a shir, Torah lecture, how it's the Raavad, and all the ins and outs of the Raavad. Now, right now, you're saying, what is Raavad, who's Raavad, why Raavad? That's why there's a class going on, isn't there? That's why we're here. You're not supposed to, right now, understand the Raavad. You don't even know what a Raavad is. I took a Raavad to work one day. I don't know. That's called fog. Are you foggy right now? You should be.
Yeah.
Okay, embrace the fog. By the end of the class, we will have come out of the fog. The reason why people are confused is because they don't understand why we get fog at the beginning. And then they don't make it to the end of this year. They walk out or daydream or fall asleep. Fog is good. It means we're doing a reset. We're not taking anything for granted. The trick is embrace the fog as I teach in my Mishlei class on Tuesday nights. And you will get through the fog. So we're going to make an open challenge. If we all admit and embrace the fog right now, the guarantee is we will get through the fog. I'm challenging you. You. Do you believe we will get through the fog tonight?
I embrace the fog.
He embraces the fog and we will get through the fog. Let's go. I'm going to give you a little bit of background to help you with the fog because no one likes a foggy day. The Raavad was a Rishon, and he was basically the one who argues against the Rambam notoriously. There's a guy by the name of the Rambam, and he wrote a book called the Mishnah Torah. It's a law book, one of the main 3 law books that would become the backbone of the Shulchan Aruch, which is the law body of Judaism. We do not follow the Shulchan Aruch if we are Ashkenazi, which is a big surprise for some of you. What do we follow? The Ramah, who is also a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. The Sfaradim follow the Shulchan Aruch largely. The Ashkenazim largely follow the Ramah. I'll give you an example. A Sephardi on Shabbos would make tea in a way that an Ashkenazi would be in trouble. Ashkenazi uses 3 cups to pour tea to drink it. Don't ask why. He just does right now. We're not getting into that. Kli Shlishi, right? The Sephardi does not require such a process. His rabbis, Yosef Karo, Sfasi Yerakaidish, says one's enough, basically. And that kind of differentiation goes through the entire Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah commentary on it. Everything in Torah works this way. Did you ever see a Chumash without Rashi? No. Did you ever see a Shas, a Talmud Bavli, Babylonian Talmud, without Taisvis and Rashi? On the page.
No.
Did you ever see a Mishnah Brura without the various commentaries? Did you ever see Rambam without the Raavad? Okay, once in a while maybe it does, I don't know. Generally speaking, did you ever see that? No, you didn't. Everything we have is this subtle. Did you ever see a Sifsei Chachamim missing from Rashi in Mikros Gedolos? No. Did you ever see a Chumash without Onkelos? No. Did you ever see Cholent without beef?
Yeah.
Sometimes. So now our friend the Raavad, he is famous for arguing on the Rambam. That's called a klal. It's a thing. It's a known thing. It never gets undone. When you have rabbis stating their views in a particular topic, that is called deya. Deya is a fancy Hebrew word for consistent thread. For example, as we taught last night, we found a unique salt in Antarctica, didn't we? Remember that when we were down there? And the rabbis questioned, can this salt work for a special rare fish found in the Atlantic Ocean? They said, no, it's not kosher. Wow, you must be holding like the Rambam there, because the Rambam says salt that has pink stripes in it is not kosher. And the other guy says, I think it's allowed. Oh, so you hold like the Ramah. Yeah. He holds that pink stripes with blue spots is kosher. Why doesn't the Rambam hold of the blue spots? He says blue spots are an accident. They weren't meant to be there. This is obviously a fictitious story. We actually didn't go to Antarctica last time I checked. So, but you would have these opinions of the Rambam and the Ramah and these two fictitious situations. Whenever something would come up with blue dots, the Rambam would say that was an accident. Did you hear about the salt from Chile? You heard about the salt from Chile, right? Yes, you did. And it had blue dots on it, right? Right? Remember that? What did the Rambam say about that? It was an accident. How did the Rambam know? Because that's his shita. That's his opinion. It never changes. And because the Torah is divine, you can rely on it. If you, for whatever reason, your community in Chile goes according to the Rambam, because the rabbis there have a tradition, every time they find salt with blue dots, they will say, it's not kosher, it was an accident. If another community says, we think it is kosher, you can bet they went by the other opinion that holds by blue dots. That's called deya. Rabbis have deya. They have consistent threads. And they hold to them. They don't just guess on a law here and a law there. They hold a view that they received and they received and they received, and they implement it. And it works out perfect, even if there are opposing views. His blue dot view, his blue dot view, they may argue, but in their own little worlds, they never are without salt. Meaning there's never a case where they're saying, we're stuck, don't know what to do. So too, obviously, with Ger Toshav. The Rambam has a view, and the Raavad has a view. Generally, the Raavad compares and contrasts his view on the Rambam. That's his mission in life. He woke up one day and said, I am going to be the yin and yang, or whatever, two sides, one coin, two sides, one coin, Rambam, Raavad, Rashi, Tosfos. It exists all through Torah. Call it a soulmate connection. The Raavad and the Rambam are married, and they go to the Maldives every time in Olam Haba. I don't know. What's the halacha? Go ahead. The Raavad. The Raavad is the halacha. Now, I've not proven that yet, have I? I just said it out of the blue. But we don't hold by blue salt, do we? Right. But before I get into why it's the Raavad, how it's the Raavad, what is the Raavad? What is a Raavad? It's initial letters. It's an acronym. No guy by the name Raavad here. What's a Rambam? It's also an acronym. What's a Rashi? Also an acronym. We're going to get into it very soon. There once upon a time in Jewish history was a holy temple. The holy temple had gerim of many kinds, and we know that because of the stories and parables and tales and legends from the Tanakh. Some may have been converts, some certainly were not converts. Some were actually idolaters. And there were Jews, Israelites, Levites, Convertites, and Cohenites. That equates to 4 houses of Israel, Cohen, Levi, Israel, Ger, and that was used for a marriage arrangement. There was a Sanhedrin, and when this person wanted to marry this person, because building the nation of Israel at that time was paramount, we had to know, could we get married? This guy was a Cohen, she came from here, her father knew this guy, who knew this girl, and the divorce of maybe wasn't kosher, the get got lost in the mail. Can we get married, Rabbi? Since they were wise men, they sat and they convened and they said, you can marry her. She is not a chalala, a forbidden woman, or a zona, or a whatever ona you want to call her. There were gerim who were converts into Israel proper, and there were gerim on the outside a bit as the 4th house. Namely, they could marry mamzerim in other unique cases that a normative Israel Cohen Levi could not marry. Welcome to the first and second temple time periods. In the first temple period, they got exiled by Sennacherib. That led to a lot of bad stuff. They came back at the time of Purim. Zerubbabel began the building of the temple, and unfortunately it wasn't the 3rd temple yet. And coincidentally enough, I believe it's our friend the Raavad that brings that view, if I'm not mistaken, right? And the famous discussion whether or not the land of Israel retained its holiness, which is not for the scope of this discussion, but it's still quite interesting. The Second Temple time period came. Those that left Christianity may refer to their New Testament, not that I have, but I have heard through the grapevine that there was something called the God-fearers of the Second Temple. I guess Christian literature speaks about it. We don't have Jewish writings that much from that time period. Have you heard about this? The God-fearers, they say the what do you call those? The academics say were the gerim of the Second Temple. It seems logical. Have I investigated it to the moon? No. Have I spoken to people that have? Yes. By the time we're going to leave the Second Temple, it's going to be destroyed. Religion was now a created thing. There's going to be a new Judaism. A new Judaism? Yes, a new Judaism. Why was there a new Judaism? Because the temple was destroyed. I now no longer have a job shechting cows for your sins. I now daven, and that's my avoda. We don't have Meiser, we don't have Truma, we don't have Paraduma. Everything in Ruach HaKodesh, the Kohen Gadol, Kodesh HaKadoshim, everything that the Torah basically speaks about, we have lost to exile with the destruction of the temple. At that same time, you may remember that a new religious movement came about. And that was a bit of a balagan. And it caused a lot of problems. Whatever it was, some people went this way, some people went that way, some people went this way, some people went that way. By the time of the Talmud's writing, shortly after the destruction, irrelevant what that time period was for the scope of this discussion. There was a yeshiva in the town of Pumbedisa, and there were Gerim and Jews. See the Maram Shif commentary at the end of Bava Kama for full discourse in the Hebrew. But since most people don't know the Hebrew, I'll quickly paraphrase for you. The Jews wanted the Gerim to convert because it seemed easier and logical. And the Jews were curious. Were they not converting because they just don't like God, or because they love God so much and they were happy who they are? That would become the backdrop of 2,000 years of Ger experience, correct? To which I believe the Chafetz Chaim asks in his commentary of the Agadotas, if I remember correctly, I have to say for myself, I read it a while ago, why don't Gerim just convert if in the end of days they're going to get to God anyways? I.e., why does so much hardship come on Gerim? Just be done with it. Whatever reason, 2,000 years was necessary to make the Ger that hopefully we're seeing today. Why didn't they get it 1,000 years ago? I don't know. Let's write letters back in time and ask them, since that's a good thing to do. Now that we've made it through religion, the Christians came, the Jews went to exile, they went in the shtetl, a guy by the name of Muhammad would pop up, and there's going to be Islam. Islam is going to rally around modern-day Israel and the Middle East. You could also call that the remnant of the 7 Canaanite nations. Why do I say that? Because today's Muslim is a throwback to those nations in the laws of Ger Toshav, who we are not speaking about today. That would be the idolater Ger Toshav, or a lowest common denominator. Simply a Muslim is an Ishmaelite who rejected idolatry according to his book of religious beliefs. That is also not for the scope of this discussion. That is brought at length in the Shulchan Aruch. See yesterday's shir, and we can post the link for where that came from. With that said, welcome to the times of the Rishonim. We are there now. We just got through all of biblical history. We got through all of exile, back to the Second Temple. We created religion. We now are Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and X-factors in the world, in exile, no revelation of Shekhinah, the deepest part of exile possible. And the question is, now what? I.e., the Rishonim, the medieval authors of Torah commentary, were in the medieval times. There was the Crusades are about to happen. Jerusalem is under attack. The Muslims want to take it from the Christians from the Muslims. Does that sound accurate to you? Yeah? You're a historian, right? Okay. We have Jews, let's just call them French Jews, the Rashi peoples, and the Egyptian Jews, the Rambam peoples. Can you accept that? In different parts of history? One's around 1100, the other one's around 1400. Okay. We're Rashi, now we're going to enter the Rishonim, and through the Rishonim, which is the name given to medieval commentators, because that's where we are. Because by the time we were in the Talmud, that's not being debated in any Ger circle. That's called Chazal. Chazal is authoritative text of law. They became the authority. Just like in the English language. Once upon a time, there was a Nordic guy named Bob, and he invented the word camera. Remember him? And he said, this is a camera. That became authoritative. It became etymology. And today we still call it a camera. We refer to the camera. We use the camera. I don't have the right to call it a chair. I don't have that right. There's a chair. There's a camera. Meaning the English language was developed once upon a time. The Talmudic period was a unique time period where the Torah was encapsulated in a way of rabbinic writings that was unique to that time, and they captured the oral Torah as it was as a revelation of the written Torah in halachic aspects. We call this Lefi Pshuto or Midrash Halacha. And that was their job. Everybody will tell you we don't draw law from the Talmud, all the more so from the Torah itself. That's just not how Jewish law works. If you would like to invent your own system, I grant you much hatzlacha. May your new religion be wonderful, and may you be successful in your idolatry. Agreed? But since we have a Torah law, we have a tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu that we have stuck to since the earliest days of Sinai. Let's go into that system as it occurs from the Rishonim time period, beginning with Rashi. Are you clear? Thank you. Rashi was a Rishon, a French Rishon, a nice guy who made wine. He was at the time of a pope. This is just background information. The pope decided not to kill Rashi in his town because the pope at that time realized it's better to get the Jews to convert to Christianity by being nice to them rather than just killing them. That was kind of futile, though, because the Crusaders came through France and killed almost everybody. That was the first crusade at the time of Rashi. They met the Muslims in Jerusalem, and that was what that was. Rashi has views of Ger Toshav, and Rashi's views are irrelevant for our discussion because they are before the Rambam Raavad. Why does that matter? Rashi would become a foundational principle that the Rambam and Raavad would draw from to conclude their conclusions. Rashi was the father of the Rishonim. Simply, he came first in time. Now, one could very easily poskin like Rashi in concept, and he's 100% valid. My opinion, Rashi is the most correct. But that is not the halacha. We said the halacha was like who? Raavad. And Rashi then is a great support and revelation in understanding the Raavad. Let's leave Rashi now. We have nothing to do with Rashi. He will have nothing to do with this discussion. He is simply there to support those who come later as our conclusions here. Now, there are other discussions in the Talmud where Rashi may be more of an active player. Not here. Nobody quotes Rashi as the halacha. Why is that? Because the halacha is... Thank you. Now we have the Rambam. The Rambam was in Egyptian rule of Islam, the Caliphate. The Rambam, ironically, was a Ger Toshav. Not according to Judaism, but he was a dhimmi. In the Sharia law, he was their version of protection for the people. In Sharia law, the Jew who was protected was called dhimmi. Paid a dhimmi tax. You could roughly, loosely translate that as their version of Ger Toshav. Obviously, the Muslims felt they were it, and the Jews were under their rule as such. And in theory, that would mean a good lifestyle. Only they kind of breached their own rules. They treated their Ger Toshav status dhimmi people as they felt. Maybe once in a while someone had a good. Most of the time, it wasn't that great. The Rambam historically actually had it pretty good for several reasons. The Rambam can be found in Isuri Bia 14:7 and 8, stating a halacha. That there is, he says, Ezahu Ger Toshav. Who's a Ger Toshav? This is 14:7 in Isuri Bia. And if you look at the subject matter of Isuri Bia, you would see that it's not a simple kind of shot in the dark halacha. There's method to the madness. If I wrote halacha of how tall a stender could be in the halachas of stender heights, what do you think the topic of that entire pillar of halachas would be? Stender height. Could I then say the stender height has to do with beach balls and racquetballs? No. Okay, thank you. So there's consistency. Nobody ever thinks to read all of Isuri Bia halachas to see the context of the Rambam. That's a minor point. Let's not get too confused about that. Let's go ahead and take the Rambam for what he is. Who's a Ger Toshav? He says a goy who takes on the 7 laws of Noah, doesn't get circumcised, doesn't get dunked in a mikveh, and he is from the Hasidic Omos Ha'olam. Then the Rambam asks, why is he called Toshav? And he gives his own answer, because we allow him to live amongst us, as it is written in Avodah Zorah 64b. That's what he says. The very next halacha in today's world, Bizman Hazeh, Ein Ger Toshav, Bizman, whatever, I forget the exact language right now, by the time of no Jubilee, no Ger Toshav. And then he goes on with a couple more details. And that is where people are being held, their minds in a net. Is the halacha like the Rambam? No. Who's the halacha like? Let's go ahead and show why. Now's the star of the show. Because didn't we say that the Raavad always writes on the Rambam in key crucial situations? So right there in 14.8, the Raavad says there is Ger Toshav even when there's not Jubilee. What the Raavad is saying, if you look inside the Raavad, he is saying that just because there's no Jubilee doesn't mean we lose our identity to the Ger Toshav. It means that would there be a Jubilee, this Ger Toshav would have further rights granted to him. That doesn't negate everything while there's not a Jubilee, says the Raavad. Does the Rambam say that he loses everything, i.e. he doesn't exist while there's no Jubilee? He just says there's no Ger Toshav while there's no Jubilee. One can make the mistake to think that means black and white. No Jubilee, no Ger Toshav. Yes, Jubilee. Yes, Ger Toshav. The Raavad's coming to show you the halacha, because there's a halacha at hand here. He's saying the Rambam's not showing you halacha. He is showing you that without the Jubilee, there's no Ger Toshav status. Look at the word status. Status is, am I a Kohen? Do I have the status of a Kohen? No. Not until Elijah comes and sanctifies me for work in the temple will I have a tudah showing my status as a working Kohen. That doesn't mean that I can marry a divorcee. Now, you might think that it's very presumptuous to interpret the Raavad as follows. Now, let's assume that this is how the Raavad is understood. In comparing, contrasting with the Rambam. That the Raavad says the Rambam would actually agree with me. And that people think the Rambam's black and white. And that the Raavad is clarifying the halacha. And that the Rambam never gave the halacha. He quoted Gemara Erech in 29a, which very clearly says, there's no Ger Toshav when there's not a time of Yovel. Then why is the Raavad saying this? Did we say that halacha is a thread? So shouldn't we see a thread come out of this little build-up of Raavad Rambam? Right? There's about 600 years of history due to come to us. If the halacha is like the Rambam, we should see every generation saying, no Ger Toshav. Is that correct? Not till Jubilee. If they're not Ger Toshav, because we're not in Jubilee, would that make them Goyim Mamish? Completely without rights, without merit, striving to keep the 7 laws ceremonially, hoping for a Messiah to come, that there should be a Yovel, and they would take their exalted status. That's what we're looking for. Unless the halacha is like the Raavad. Then we would never see that Rambam theoretical salvation story. We would see a trail of practical Ger Toshav from the time of the Raavad Rambam, even before, says who? Rashi, Chazal, the Talmud, the Tanakh. And coming out of the Raavad would be a consistent trail of Deya, i.e. dots consistently showing Raavad. And here's the clincher. Nowhere do we find someone saying, yes, Rambam, no, Raavad. In fact, no one even acknowledges the Rambam. You know why? It doesn't exist. This understanding of the Rambam is a new invention post-World War II. Now, there is such a thing as what the Rambam is saying, but it is speaking about slavery and workers that come into effect after Jubilee, to which they will be protected by the Torah law. And no one's saying that's not, a reality in where that reality is due. Yes, in the time to come, if you bring somebody from Taiwan to help you with your patio in a time of Jubilee, they must take the 7 laws in the land of Israel, and they cannot do work for their master on Shabbos. They are like a slave or a servant in many regards. If that is you, and that's what you want to be, and we are not in Jubilee, so it's not you now, there are ways that you can convert to Islam, and you can be what we said before, like this Islamic non-idolater type servant slave, which we will get to at the end of the class when regarding Zionism. However, the commentaries suggest if you do that, your Christian friends may kill you. It's not the thing to do. It's actually forbidden to bring somebody into this situation. Muslims have chosen it for themselves through history, and that's their prerogative. If you're not a natural Muslim, you are in danger for making yourself like a slave. In fact, the Raavad warns about that. The one danger is do not make yourself a slave, because you will be stuck without the mitzvah of a Jew to help you out of it, which doesn't come into effect until Jubilee. Now, since we're not making slaves and servants and patio workers, right, the Torah does have these things in it, right? If a nation is idolatrous, we bring them back because we conquered them to remove their idolatry, as it says in Devarim, then yes, that Ger Toshav would be in effect. King David, however, says it's not necessary. If they do everything kosher, as Rashi actually brings there, they become gers we're going to present here now. No slaves, no servants, everyone loves God. It's a Ger Toshav of the Raavad. Is the Raavad the same as the Rambam? No. Are they even remotely in the same world? No. So that's the Raavad. Let's see if the Raavad is consistent all the way through. Shall we? There are many Rishonim that are around that time before we progress, such as the Miri and the Ramban. You're going to hear those names when you research. The Ramban says, the Miri says, ignore them. Why? Because they don't play into the halacha. Much like Rashi. Not every Rishon plays into the halacha when we determine the halacha. The way you learn is you take all the Rishonim, all the later ones, the Achronim, and you follow the thread of halacha. Not every Rishon made it his business to be a part of the halacha. Or we don't involve every Rishon to be a part of the halacha. It just happens to be that way based on what each Rishon brought to the table. Rashi brought great things to the table, but he didn't bring us the halacha. He brought us the awareness and consciousness that could give birth to the halacha. Was Yishai, the father of David, a king? Was David a king? Did Yishai allow David to be king? Yes, he did, by being his father. David must have learned from his father Yishai. So there's relevance to Yishai, one of the 4 men that didn't sin, if I remember correctly, but he's not David. Such is the way of life. Was Shmuel the Messiah? Was Shmuel a king? Did Shmuel anoint David? Can't we say that Shmuel is better than David because we like Shmuel? Shmuel had a job. David had a job. Thank you. There's several key Chazal Talmudic sources that are exclusively used and interchangeable. Krisis 9a to talk about the Ger Toshav Shabbat, Yavamas 48b to speak about the Ger Tzedek Shabbat, Makkas 9a to speak about Ger Toshav, and Avodah Zorah 64b also about the Ger Toshav. Those are the only Chazal Talmudic spots, or the Makur, Mara Makomus, that the Rishonim are hashing out a million ways to see who is a player here. There is an oral Torah and a written Torah. The written Torah never, not once, says Ger Tzedek or Ger Toshav. It says Ger, it says Toshav, it says Ger Vit Toshav. And those are all different and fundamentally do not carry the context of Ger Tzedek, which one might think is a convert, or Ger Toshav. The oral Torah, however, does bring terms such as Ger Tzedek and Ger Toshav and Ger Gamor and Ksat Gerus and Gary this, Gary that, Gary this, Gary that, Gary this, Gary that. Chasidi Omos Ha'olam. Basically, all of your terminologies are found in the oral Torah. Not only the Babylonian Talmud, but the entire scope of the oral Torah. The Rambam speaks about in the opening of his Mishnah Torah that the Rabbanim of Pumbedisa went out with their wisdom and they spread the world with the oral Torah. Today, it has been mitzamsem, narrowed down to mostly the Babylonian, with flavors of Midrash, Zohar Kabbalah, and the Yerushalmi, and the Sifri Midrash Halacha. But in terms of the main diet, the Talmud Bavli, number one, it may not be the only authoritative text. It contains the language of all authoritative texts. That's why it is taught in yeshivas, learn the Talmud Bavli, and you will be equipped to learn any book on the planet. My Rosh Yeshiva told me that. I followed that. And I think I've proven today I can learn any book or sefer in this office, which I have pretty much a bit of everything. And the Talmud Bavli teaches you how to get in and out of every sefer. Have you seen that actually happen? Proficiency from the Talmud Bavli into every type of genre of sefer. Yeah, we've done this whole game. There's also Kabbalah, which brings in many types of Ger language, but on a mystical level, and is not the scope of this class or halachic discourse, as we don't generally poskin from Kabbalah, but it is interesting because it is consistent. It is not a contradiction. It is consistent, but requires a mastery of the language. Let's go ahead now and unpack our main Chazal Talmudic Babylonian Talmud sources. Krisis 9a speaks about a Ger Toshav who can keep Shabbat. Now, a Jew hears that, he hears Jewish Shabbat. What he needs to hear is, he doesn't keep Shabbat by not doing malacha, he does a Ger thing. He does a Ger Shabbat. He breaks Shabbat, he's making coffee, he's smoking cigarettes, he's posting memes on Facebook. It's not Shabbos for him, as a Jew would know it. There's 3 opinions in the Talmud of what that means. He breaks it according to Yom Tov, Chol Moed, or he just says, hey, Shabbat Shalom. The Ger Toshav there, and this is unanimous amongst all commentators, it can be one of 2 Ger Toshavs, because they both fit perfectly. The Brisker Derech calls this Zvei Dinim, 2 laws. You can read it, the servant-slave jubilee, Ger Toshav. You can also read it, the good, holy Ger Toshav, Noahide Bo Tshuva, as looking for his godly soul, not jubilee required. The difference is, are we simply saying keep Shabbos so he doesn't make coffee for his rabbi on Saturday? Or does he not make coffee for his rabbi on Saturday because for him it's not Saturday, it's Shabbos? And interestingly enough, Rashi quotes that the reason of this Shabbos is that is the day he attaches to Israel, as Isaiah 56:3, and it is his day to not serve idols. He is very serious about not serving idols on Shabbos. It's a chumrah that he takes on himself. Thus, Krisus 9a can be perfectly learned both ways. Rashi says it's the kosher, Noahai Deschom ben Noach kosher, to quote Rabbi Moshe Weiner of Sheva Mitzvahs Hashem, ben Noach kosher. The other opinions state that it is a non-kosher ben Noach. He is Akum Evid, whatever you would like to call him. He's your worker who came to fix your patio, and you're not to work him on Shabbos. Let's now move to 48b of Yavamas. Not the Ger Toshav Shabbat, but the Ger Tzedek Shabbat. Now, most people would think that's a convert, but they didn't open the books. Nobody says that's a convert. When you look in the Shulchan Aruch 304, the various commentaries, especially the Vilna Gaon, it's a slave servant who took on the mitzvahs like a woman, not full 613. He's called Ger Tzedek. He's actually a Ger Toshav with an elevated status called Ger Tzedek, but should he wish to take on 7 laws of Noah, the Rambam paskins accordingly in Hilchos Avadim, which is a nice way of saying all authorities call him a Ger Toshav who has more mitzvahs than 7 in a prescribed way. He is a slave. He's not what we're trying to be. And he has more. He's called Ger Tzedek, the Ger Tzedek non-Jew. When the Ramban says, when Rashi says that the 10 Commandments, the Gercha Asher B'Sharecha, the Ger in your gates, we are talking about him. Him. However, the Ramban says it must always be the Ger Toshav there. And there we have again, the Krisus 9a, kosher, ben Noach kosher, fits in as well. It's just a matter of how the Rishonim cut it up. And again, we never lost sight. Who's the halacha like?
Right.
The Raavad. So we're always concerning the thread of a ben Noach kosher, a holy kosher ben Noach, the Shabbos that he is involved with. He doesn't make coffee for his rabbi. He is not a slave. He's doing it because he loves God. He's not serving idols. He is a fan of Isaiah 56:3, the Nilva of Hashem, who is destined to keep Shabbos in the end of days, not like a Jew. He doesn't keep malacha. He does make coffee for himself. Is that clear to you?
Yeah.
Then we have Makos 9a, about the Ger Toshav who accidentally kills a Jew or accidentally kills a Ger Toshav. That Talmud is impossible to understand unless you make the following Okimta. Okimta means a way to set the understanding that it makes sense. There's a Ger Toshav Akum, non-Jew, and Ger Toshav Kosher, who is, again, our Ben Noach Kosher. There's a different outcome for each one. And we're going to get to that when we mention the Grees at the very end. The Ben Noach, who is not kosher, he's a Goy, Akum, idolater, right? He's a Canaanite. He's only called Ger Toshav because he is literally a stranger, Toshav, dwelling with us for matters of commerce and working in social practicality. If he kills a Jew, we kill him. Now, that's not, there's depth to the law, but that's the basic premise. A kosher ben Noach, he is removed from the death penalties regularly associated with this Ger Toshav non-Jew Akum Goy idolater. And he enters into Torah law in the statutes, where it is applicable to him. At the end of the class today, I will mention the Grees on the Rambam, and what I just said about Makos 9a is essentially the Grees on the Rambam. Hold that thought when we get there. Lastly, we have Avodah Zorah 64b. This is what the Rambam quotes about who was the Ger Toshav. Now you'll say, how could it be the Rambam quotes him when you said the Rambam says this is a slave or the Akum and all these things? The true answer is the Rambam never makes a uniform daya or opinion that all Ger Toshav are slaves. That is a false idea. Nobody ever actually said that. People think that because they don't learn it deeply. The fact that we have Yavamas 48, or Avodah Zorah, Avodah Zorah 64b. Who was a Ger Toshav? concerning the mitzvah we have to sustain him, which the Raavad says, but while we are not in Jubilee, there is a lesser degree of sustenance we owe him. Therefore, it is dangerous to become a Ben Noach kosher Ger Toshav today. That doesn't mean it is forbidden. It just means the status given or rights given from Jubilee are lacking. There is thus, Moshe Weiner quotes this in his book, Sheva Mitzvos Hashem. There is what's called the Rambam, and the other opinions on the Rambam. That is not a contradiction. A lot of times in Rishonim, let's make a pretend case of a Rashi. For example, you and I had an argument once with a fellow. Rashi states in the Tractate Sukkah that the third temple comes built from heaven. Some would say that Rashi actually believes that. That's why he wrote it. Others would say Rashi does not believe it. He simply quoted it from another source. The difference is, does Rashi believe that or not? Some can say yes, some can say no. The Rambam, as it applies to who was a Ger Toshav today, that is the standard opinion. Historically standard opinion, and the only quoted opinion amongst Rishonim and Achronim. The new opinion of later scholars today, who are pushing an agenda of slave status, worker status, have attempted to make the Rambam only serving himself with the Ger Toshav for slave status. That is unfounded in text. You can say it's an opinion. You can say whatever you want to say. But that requires twisting the learning to an agenda, and simply it just doesn't fit. And the way they make it fit is by leaving out pertinent information that goes into the halacha. And who's the halacha like? The Raavad. Now, I have not stated why it's the Raavad, so don't question why is it like the Raavad. We've only stated the Chazal material that the Raavad and the Rambam and everybody had to work with. Thus, in Avodah Zorah 64b, we can see a possibility of two types of Ger Toshav. In Krisus 9a, how many types of Ger Toshav? Two types of Ger Toshav. In Yevamos 48b, two types of Ger Toshav. Makos 9a, two types of Ger Toshav. Everywhere we see Ger, whether it's the Chumash, it can be a non-Jewish Ger, a Jewish Ger. In the Talmud, it can be a Jewish Ger, a non-Jewish Ger. Jethro is a big question. People have to figure it out. In the Talmud Chazals, it always say Tzvei Dinim. It can go this way or that way. That is also not a contradiction. There's something called Miut and Riboy. Riboy means it can be both this and that. I am sitting in the room. Is that correct? You are sitting in the room. Is that correct? Are we arguing? Could it be we're both sitting in the room? But we both say that we are alone. I only said I'm in the room. Will you please say that you are only in the... I'm sorry, I'm in the room. Go ahead.
I'm in the room.
But I'm in the room.
I'm in the room.
If somebody quoted Rabbi David Katz, would they have heard you say you're in the room? No, only me. And if they would have only heard you, they wouldn't have known me. It would take another person to say, back up, guys. I was there, both guys were in the room, and they are not the same person. One was giving the shiur, one was taping the shiur. Not the same people. The alternative is mute. One would say, I'm in the room. Go out of here. Go away. You would say, you're in the room, I should go away. And the people looking on would say, who's right? One can make a case it's my room, because this is my office. You could say, while you're here, I'm pushed aside, just like davening Musaf takes preference over Shachris, right? Or I forget how does it work on Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Chodesh and Musaf, all that. So you can say, while you're here, you are the preferential treatment. Some could make that argument.
Yeah.
You always have to understand in the context and not be afraid to learn two things into one thing and not being a contradiction. Why is it not a contradiction? Can you read the right? Theoretically, could you read, if there's two Ger Toshavs for every one of the four Talmuds, by that premise, could the Raavad fit each time by Deya? Yes. Could you then argue the Rambam, so-called Rambam sheet that fits as well? Are they arguing? No. There's room for both to stand their ground. They have blue salt. They have blue salt. If you are a slave, does the Raavad help you? No. If you are a kosher ben Noach, does the Rambam slave help you? Two different worlds. Now we're going to get into the halacha in contemporary law. Shulchan Aruch and the Torah. The two places in the Shulchan Aruch where the halacha is real is in resting your slave on Shabbos. Slave is also an eved, a worker. Right? A slave is a loose term. There's also the aspect of touching wine. So the four Talmuds we saw weigh into these two places in the Shulchan Aruch. One is in Yerodea, I think 124, if I remember correctly, and the other one's 304 in Orach Chaim. There's many great commentaries there that explain there's a Ger Toshav today. 100%. One type of Ger Toshav is a non-Jew who takes on the 7 laws, and he is not forbidden to be around your wine. The difference is, if he was an idolater, the wine would be idolatrous wine. By Hilchas Shabbos, we all keep Shabbos today. By the way, my smicha is in Hilchas Shabbos. That's how I got involved and interested in this. And interestingly enough, my smicha is given by the same rabbi that gave the Haskama to the Divine Code, Rabbi Zalman Nehemiah Goldberg, for those that are curious. It is not allowed to have a Shabbos Goy today, or at any time, unless under extreme conditions of deathly ill and things of such. Thus, we have to know what is the status of the non-Jew for Shabbos halacha. There's a different halacha for a Ger Toshav, ben Noach kosher, took on the 7 laws. Great guy. But I have to break Shabbos because I'm very sick. I'm close to dying. Who do we get to break Shabbos for us? We need somebody to shaft the cow and to cook a nice, juicy steak, all within the laws of Shabbos. Who do we get to do it? Should the Ger Toshav do it or the Akum Goy? The answer is the Akum Goy. It's called Amira Lagoy in halacha. The Ger Toshav, when you break Shabbos, you do it the least way possible. For example, if I had to go to the emergency room, it would be better to take an ambulance than have you drive me. Because you shouldn't break Shabbos for me if I can get a ride. And if I don't need you to go with me in the ambulance, you should stay behind. So there are categories of non-Jew based on where they are at spiritually. Not how great they're this, where they're holding. Just reality, where they're holding. And that's the Krisis 9a. Are you not making coffee for your rabbi because you're his worker, and therefore you do not work for him on Shabbos? Or because it's a chutzpah and it's a day of God? That's the Shulchan Aruch and the Torah. The Torah is the blueprint to the Shulchan Aruch, written by the son of the Rosh. The Shulchan Aruch takes the opinions of the Rif, the Rosh, and the Rambam generally. Famous Rishonim are all weighed into the Shulchan Aruch. The Torah's job was to gather the Rishonim and figure out the Deya of the halachas that would become contemporary. It's late Rishonim. So the early Achronim in Sfat, Rabbi Yosef Karo, would take the Torah. He wrote a commentary on the Torah, a famous commentary. I think it's better than the Shulchan Aruch. Many people in Halakha think so, right? The Beis Yosef, which is Rabbi Yosef Karo, is generally more authoritative or in depth than the Shulchan Aruch. And it's the same person. And the commentators then speak about the Shulchan Aruch, and it's a unique study of where he changes upon himself. In the Beis Yosef to the Shulchan Aruch, he is the same guy, just more refined works. And then there are commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, and there are commentaries on the Torah, as we said, Raavad, Rambam, Tosfos, Rashi. That's how the Torah works. Now to get into the 1700s, Vilna Gaon Zionism, Alter Rebbe Chabad. The Vilna Gaon Zionism, the Vilna Gaon invented Zionism. It's called Zionit Gra'it. It includes the Nilvim, the non-Jews, because the Vilna Gaon understood and writes about in Midrash Shlomo about the establishment of the Yishuv according to Torah law. He actually came to Israel with the students, his students came to Israel with the students of the Chabadniks, and he says the Alter Rebbe was a tremendous Talmud Chacham. You need to know that. The Alter Rebbe writes in his Shulchan Aruch Harav, the first Rebbe of Chabad. There's something in the same two areas of law in the Shulchan Aruch. He is a commentary to the Shulchan Aruch. And he writes about the servant, slave, worker, Ger Toshav, who becomes relevant in Jubilee. Should he want to become a slave before Jubilee, he can become what's called Toshav, a servant. And again, as is brought in the commentaries on Shulchan Aruch, the one way of doing it is by becoming Muslim. You leave Christianity, you become a Muslim. You're officially not an idolater, but you're considered an Akum Goy, not exactly kosher, and you can do certain things that we will speak about soon. Very little merit. Very little. It's not meant to be a big merit. Therefore, it's forbidden to do. It's not recommended to do. Basically, don't do it. It's a loophole option in the halacha. The Muslims, because they naturally found that route by being Muslims, they are used in the country as taking the spot of the former 7 Canaanite nations for things like commerce and for upholding the Heter Mechira, farming agricultural laws, which are rabbinically enacted until the time of the Messiah, which will become Torah activated. It is all rabbinic. It doesn't make it false. It just shows how it's possible. Let's move on to the 1800s. Do you see the thread starting to pop up? We see the slave, and that's the Chabad side, and the Alter Rebbe, and we see the Gra talking about the good guys. They're not arguing. Just the Alter Rebbe just didn't talk about the Gra, and the Gra just didn't talk about the Alter Rebbe. Just like I didn't talk about you, and you didn't talk about me. Rabbi Nachman came in the 1800s, and he is a major Ger advocate. I'm only mentioning that because it's interesting. Move to the 20th century, the state of Israel is coming back. We're leaving the shtetl, and now the halacha l'maisa is absolutely relevant and revealed. Are you ready? There was a chief rabbi of Israel, Rav Kook. He set up the Judaism of Israel that even exists today. To get married in Israel is a procedure of Judaism. Our agriculture, our prayers, the wall, all of our Judaism of Israel, which is not the same as America. American Judaism is fundamentally different than Israeli Judaism. That is not a unique dichotomy of today, as it was the same story back in the days of the Talmud. The Babylonians made fun of the Israelis made fun of the Babylonians. One of the differences is 1 day Yontif, 2 days Yontif. That's just one difference. Agricultural laws versus do you do Chol of Yisrael in America or treif milk? It's different Judaisms in these two countries. They're different. The subtleties might be subtle, but yet they are different. I'm not saying we are in redemption. It's just Eretz Yisrael is not Chutz La'aretz. Rav Kook established the Ger Toshav in the laws of agriculture for the sake of the Shemitah year. It's a Torah command in the agriculture. We're not going to get into that. The bottom line is the land of Israel, when Jews occupy it, there must be a Ger Toshav connected with the land to help the Jews properly serve God in the land in this particular year, every 7 years. On the lowest common denominator, the Muslim will fill the job. He's called Ger Toshav. He's like Ger Toshav. Lowest common denominator. He simply, by the definition of his book, has rejected idolatry. It's enough for a rabbinic enactment to work, But there's contention on this law. People don't feel comfortable because it presupposes that this Muslim is actually in concordance with Torah law and there's no one there to govern him. The reason why Rav Kook enacted it was so that the non-religious, if this were to work, it will have come out that they did not sin. It's a nice thing to do. You may be able to rely on it. You may not be able to rely on it. The fact is, Rav Kook went with it, and what was his rationale in instituting that? The halacha of the Raavad. This is written in his Beis Din. Now, he was a chief rabbi of Israel before the state was enacted. Rav Herzog continued it all the way to even Rav Avadia Yosef was a major advocate of the halacha of the Raavad of using Ger Toshav. The entire state of Israel's history has relied on the Raavad position. This past Shemitah, what's his name? Was a Ger Toshav put in place by? Suggested by Rabbi Uri Sharkey. Based on the learning and research of that a Ger Toshav was the first time in 2,500 years, and I went to Rabbi Sharkey's house personally and spoke with him, asking him why he used my stuff. And what was the answer he gave me? We used the Raavad. I actually taught at Brit Olam in 2012, or 2012 or 13, I forget, it was right around the turn of the year. How the Raavad opinion was the halacha of how there's Ger Toshav today. How did I know it then? Why did Sharkey know it? Why did Lau know it? Why did Cook know it? Why did Herzog know it? Because the Raavad is the halacha, always was the halacha. There's no stipulation of that halacha. It doesn't say that when the this and the Shemitah, it doesn't say that. It's applied when it needs to be applied. When you have a non-Jew in your house, you say, where are you holding in laws? Well, I'm a Noahide kosher, ben Noah kosher. Also, do not make me a cup of coffee. Not that I would suggest such a thing. The point is, when the Jew is in a relationship with the non-Jew, it becomes a question, which type of non-Jew are you? The biggest nafkamina. How do you know if someone is a slave servant non-Jew? Or a kosher ben Noach, great Noahide Bal Tshuva, God soul, God-fearing person? How do you know that? Parshas Rei, you give the nevela to the ger and you sell it to the nachri. The halacha is makbid, that you must find a ger to give it to before you sell it to a nachri, a total non-Jew. If there's no ger, then you proceed to sell it to the nachri. Because we don't want you making accidental shchitas and saying, oops, another win, I made more money today selling treifas to the non-Jews. So if there are two non-Jews in front of me, and one of them says, I believe there's two types of non-Jews. Exalted holiness, and the other guy is servitude. And his friend says, I don't think so. A Gentile is a Gentile is a Gentile, a Goy, Akum. It's all the same thing. Chasid almost olam, it's all the same. What do we do? One says the Rambam is the halacha. The other one says the Raavad's the halacha, and he recognizes the Rambam. How do we know who's right? I'm the Jew, and I have meat. Which one of these two non-Jews do I give it to, and which one do I sell it to? It is forbidden for me to give it to the Eved, the Nachri. So if we have someone who believes in servitude, it is forbidden for me to give him that meat if there's a kosher ben Noach in front of me. If there's not a kosher ben Noach in front of me, two slaves, two servitude people, Ger Toshav lowest level, B'di'evid, I can give it to them. Much like the aliyah in the synagogue. When I'm in synagogue as a Cohen, who gets the first aliyah? Me. Cohen, Levi, Israel. If I'm not in synagogue, who gets the aliyah? Whoever they decide. So here the Cohen's like the non-Jew that learns Torah is like a Cohen Gadol. First rights. Give him the nevela. When there's no Cohen, no Ger, only Nachri, then as long as they are technically, Ger Toshav, which is the Hebrew for 7 laws, or even just having rejected idolatry. Very low level, like the Muslim. It's not forbidden to give him the meat. But again, if there's a total Christian in the room and a Muslim, you give the meat to the Muslim, you sell it to the Christian. There's a nafkamina. There are dargas. But on the higher level Ger Toshav, if we have I'm going to say this openly, okay? I'm going to say this openly. If James Gosnell and Bob Wells were before me, the Jew, and I have nevela, I am going to give the meat to James Gosnell, and I would sell. And if James wasn't there, I would have to sell the meat to Bob Wells to show the distinction. No, it doesn't work out perfectly because what is there? 2 pieces of meat. The point is, one is a clear case of Nachri, one is a clear case of Ger. The Nachri can always make a case for being Ger, just like the Ishmaelite who has rejected idolatry. Remember, the Ger Toshav slave is still called Ger Toshav, simply by the right that in the land of Israel has rejected idolatry. But there's no comparison to he who has received a godly soul, taken on the Shabbat as a day of God, not like a Jew. Therefore, who is the Iker to give the meat to? The Ger in your gate. Who is the Iker to sell it to? The Nachri. We always hear 2. There's always the Nachri who can bump up a little bit, almost like Ger Toshav. And there's the Ger Toshav who can do the third opinion of Avodah Zorah 64b, keeps the whole Torah outside of one mitzvah. What is that one mitzvah? Nevela. Then you have the Grees on the Rambam. We mentioned that. The Grees paskins like the Raavad. This is the Brisker method. So we see Rav Kook, Vilna Gaon, all the way coming out of the precedent in the Rishonim, as there are other Rishonim that are used in this learning, the Ritva and the Rashba. The Ritva says there's 3 types of non-Jew. The Ger Toshav, who is like an official Ger Toshav because he testified for 3 Jews, not Jubilee. Then there's a Ben Noach under him, Ben Noach kosher. He's not an Amalekite, not under the level of the nations. He is literally not a Goy. 7 laws just didn't get verified. And then Goy. And the Rashba then says, every place it says Ger, like a newborn child, he who can Gersh in his guy or Ger who converts, where it says that for a Gersh in his guy or Ger said a convert, you can make the same claim for the Ger Toshav non-Jew. Every time Ger, you have to ascertain, as we see in the Sifsei Chachamim commentary in Rashi, Lehit Gayer, which is the same language used for Jethro, is used also to become Ger to the 7 laws of Noah, as written explicitly in the Sifsei Chachamim, whereas I think it's 10:18, 10:19, about calling out to our 20, where you call to a city in war called for peace. Look at the Rashi there. I think it's 28. I forget the exact verse, but the Sifsei Chachamim explains Rashi. He does tshuva, and he is Lehit Gayer. Jethro was Lehit Gayer. And for the record, people, Jethro was not a convert. The Talmud and Midrash that deals with Jethro never even questions whether he converted. All they ask is which kind of offering did he bring to Sinai. If he came before Sinai, it would be this one. Or if he came after Sinai, it was that one. Because it's the question, when did he go to Sinai? Did he bring an Ola or a Shlamim? 2 types of offerings. Only the non-Jews can bring an Ola. Even today they can bring an Ola. If he brought a Shlamim, it's a question how. And the answer, in the end of days, the non-Jews will also bring a shlamim to the temple, and Jethro was an end-of-days guy, because he was a great guy, just who he was, and he married to have the Rechabites, the most amazing non-Jew Ger offspring of all time, the Kenites and the Rechabites. Nowhere does it say he converted. The Ramban learns laws of conversion from him, because as we said, from every Ger you can always learn too. It's not a contradiction. That doesn't mean he literally converted, because he didn't. No one ever suggested he did. Can you make the claim he did? You can make the claim that you want, whatever you want. Just like the Rambam is the halacha and the only thing you might want to say. You can make that claim. I can claim to be Mickey Mouse. I can make that claim. It doesn't mean there's precedent or history behind it. The Grease, as we said, was the most authoritative contemporary psak halacha on the Raavad, and he explains it explicitly. That the Raavad says that, or he says that of the Raavad, the Rambam is not in contradiction. It is only that the Raavad is filling in what the Rambam left out, just like the Alter Rebbe of Chabad. The Alter Rebbe spoke about the servitude slave Ger Toshav, not because it's the only one, because he left out the other side. It wasn't particular to where he was speaking about in the Shulchan Aruch about resting your slave. Comes the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Likutei Sichos 31 and 26, Parshas Jethro, Parshas Mishpatim 126, 127 pages, and he brings the entire sugya. He says the Alter Rebbe brought the slave and the Rambam, but that was only half the story. And that's for Jubilee. And it was about Shabbos Goy. I'm bringing something different, he says, starting with letter Chet. He says, you ever hear about the Rashba? Remember the Rashba? He says, Ger can be something different. It's almost like a convert. It's called Ksat Gerus. Convert is 613 now. Ksat Gerus is the language for partial conversion. All language Ger can be conversion or Ger Toshav conversion, which is fundamentally not in Akum, Goy, idolater, servant, slave, worker. It's the Ger Toshav, Ben Noah, kosher, holy guy, godly soul. He's taking his conversion a different alternative route that he has the right to do even today. That's the Rashba. And the Ritva backs that up in his own unique way. The only question amongst the Rishonim is how do we make that guy official? Not status. Status is Jubilee. That has nothing to do with that. That's if he can live in Israel. We want to know official. Meaning, does the guy have clout? Do I fear he's going to tomorrow turn away and become an idolater? Because the Ger Toshav can say, today I'm kosher, tomorrow I'm not kosher. Today I'm kosher, tomorrow I'm not kosher. A convert can't do that. Once he converts, it's over. The Ger Toshav has the luxury to wax and wane. So the Rishonim say, hey, Rambam, 3 friends, declare, do something serious. Like the Shabbos Krisis 9a. Not like a Jew, like a Ger Toshav of today. So that we know we can trust you. Because I need to know which Ger Toshav are you. If you come around saying you're Ger Toshav, I might think you're a slave. And I need to know which one you are. Now the Jewish people are commanded to know in the time of Jubilee. Today we are not commanded to know. But if you want to be what you are, and you want the Jewish people to be in your life, then it's in your best interest to go like the Rambam, where he says in front of 3 people. Or like any of the other Rishonim. But not for slave. It has nothing to do with that. It's a confirmation of a mitzvah to sustain him, to be charitable to him, to acknowledge him, not to receive him, makablin, give him the merit to be on Jubilee. The bottom line is he your worker or is he a godly soul member of the congregation? Do you want him around on this way or that way? And the halacha is like the Raavad. The other way is not even allowed. We have to do dances in rabbinics just to get him in the door as an idolater, servant, slave. The other guy is not going that route. So how does he come in? So the Rebbe brings the entire thing. The Rashba, the Ritva. The Rebbe quotes the Rogachover, who is the middle opinion of the Ritva. Ritva says, look, we have a problem. There's no Beis Din today. There's no Jubilee. So it's going to be very hard to get people to believe in this because they're confused. So he says, that's interestingly enough, the halacha is like who? Right. And he says, what's that level? As long as you're not Goy Akum, i.e. Ben Noach, which Rabbi Moshe Weiner calls a Ben Noach kosher, you've left the nations, you're not a Mullik, you can receive the godly soul. Ger Toshav's a plus. If your minion gives you a Ger Toshav status, not status Jubilee, just we know this guy, Heksher, Tudah, you have a great but it's not necessary. It's a chumrah. Because of Gullus. So the middle opinion is the one that is alive. But it doesn't necessarily bring the merit of Ger Toshav. The question is for schar of mitzvahs, that's between you and God. The reward of mitzvahs. But you're fundamentally not a goy. And the only question Rabbi Moshe Weiner is asking is that Ben Noah kosher between him and the Ger Toshav, does he really get merit for his reward? We don't know. We don't know. The Ger Toshav for sure does. That's why after Jubilee, everything's good if he wants to do it. But in the meantime, we don't know. But he's not a goy. He definitely gets Olam Haba. Everyone says that. We just don't know his reality as a Ben Noah kosher. So do you want to be in a place of questionable reality because you are doing it for the sake of heaven and you're doing it for the love of God? And the Torah says, go ahead. You have that right. But people might not embrace you. The other guy, we say, unfortunately, people embrace that guy. But he's a servant and a slave. He certainly has no reward. It's a safer kind of, we know we're dealing with. That's the question that comes about when you don't go like the Raavad. But the Raavad is the basis of this Ritva and the Rashba from the different Chazols. It's the same thread of the Raavad. It just crystallizes different. And we know that because when it gets to Rav Kook, he doesn't quote the Rashba, he doesn't quote the Ritva. They're kind of like the balancing act of the Raavad, sharpening up the Raavad. He quotes the Raavad. The Grease quotes the Raavad. The Rebbe quotes the exact position of the Raavad. All 20th century rabbis quote the Raavad. Rabbi David Lau quotes the Raavad. Chafetz Chaim in a Sefer Mitzvahs explains there's Ger Toshav today, of love the Ger, which we can understand. That's the Raavad. The Ger never went away. Even Rav Moshe Feinstein is only forbidding non-Jews doing mitzvahs of the Ben Necher of Isaiah 56:3, but not 56:3, which is, again, Isaiah 56:3 is the Ben HaNecher, he who is good and allowed to attach to Israel. In contrast to Ben Necher, modern day Messianic Jews, seat on the belt loop. Rav Moshe says they are the Gerim Grurim, the ones that are rapping tefillin against the will of the rabbis, brazenly breaking in. We're going to do mitzvahs. We're coming in. We're going to get aliyahs of the Torah. It's all forbidden. You can't just claim to be Jewish. I believe in my heart I'm Jewish. I want to do mitzvahs, not like the halacha. There's a way of learning Torah and coming in. The kosher Ben Noah Ger Toshav Raavad halacha today knows that. He operates there. That's his right to operate kosher. The slave isn't even thinking about that. It's the heretic Gerim Grurim that Rav Moshe says, get him out of here. And that's why there's a lot of fear and confusion, which that's where we're going to end the first part of this class. Now we're going to answer issues. Ready to answer issues? The issues are, we have slaves, Ger Toshav, we have kosher Ger Toshav, and people claiming to be either one or neither. Very confusing. Jubilee straightens all that out. Because now we have to know. Today we can't know. So they want to make people slaves because it's safe and easy to identify. Call them Noahides. Then there's the Ben Noah kosher, who has the halacha like the Raavad, as we saw, all the way through to the modern state of Israel, from Rav Kook, all the chief rabbinate, Rabbi David Lau, and historically through the Chazal. What is the halacha, sir? Did you see any reason to believe it was not like the Raavad? Is there another option, but it has nothing to do with the Raavad? Slavery has nothing to do with the Raavad. It's just there's another world. There's a world of slavery. And there's a world of liberty. The world of liberty is the halacha of Ger Toshav today. Why? Because the slavery is not Ger Toshav today. It's like Ger Toshav today. To be like Ger Toshav today, you have to go even lower to literally slave status. So today there's only one Ger Toshav, isn't there? There's slavery, which is like it, but not it. And Ger Toshav. If you want to be Ger Toshav today, that's the halacha of the Raavad. It's more challenging. It's more difficult. It's historically proven. And it is the viable option. And if someone wants to be a slave, they can be a slave. And if somebody wants to be a mazik and cause problems, the Gerim, Grurim, the Erev Rav, who are always there to manipulate from the confusion, then that's what we contend with. Let's go ahead now and state some of the problems we have, right? I'm going to knock these out real quick. Issues. Yes, people, there are issues. And we've already stated them. There's slaves. There's kosher people. It is forbidden to be a slave, really. If somehow people have chosen that, there's kosher Ben Noah Ger Toshav, and there are people just causing damage from the Erev Rav set called the Gerim Gorim, those that just barge their way in, say, I'm a Ger Toshav and I want an aliyah. You cannot have an aliyah in the shul. No one says that. You can't just put tefillin on because you feel like it the wrong way. You see in the belt loop. Messianic Judaism is wrong, is forbidden. Rav Moshe was talking about that. The Navi was talking about that. And that's the issues. All these camps, Ephraimites, Hebrew roots, they confuse one another. My approach is the kosher, holy path of godless in Torah. The other paths are of destruction and despair. If you want despair, mazel tov to you. If you want destruction, you are a problem. If you want God, then you are blessed. Here I'm going to spout off real quick the problems. Rashi versus Rambam. Rambam's a problem when you don't understand the Rambam. In the laws of Noah, and the Chaim, my co-author, Chaim Chlorfine's Path of the Righteous Gentile, almost every halacha came down to either Rashi or Rambam. Just an interesting issue. Rambam Rashi, or Rambam Raavad, Rambam Rashi. Right? Understand the Rambam. Am I making a new religion? That's a ridiculous complaint. If the Noahide makes an eighth mitzvah, that's a religion. Ger is not an eighth mitzvah. No one negates the 7 laws. Doing more mitzvot is precedented in the Rambam, Hilchos Malachim, chapter 10, halacha 10. That's already beyond the level of the Goyim. The 7 laws limitation is only on the Goyim. They cannot do an 8th law. There's no such thing as 8 laws of Noah. What there is reshus, a permission to do things. It's not a law. If a ger learns Torah, that's not saying he's commanded with an 8th law. He's saying I have 7 laws. You never lose the 7 laws. And I have taken my right and permission to do things that are spiritual and holy and connecting to God. Permission is not a law. Permission is permission. Some have said I speak Hebrew over their head. In every class I give to Noahides, I speak English. If I use Hebrew, I translate it. If it's Hebrew, that means I'm speaking to somebody that is not you. If it's an all-Hebrew class, that means it's for people that are probably Jewish, most likely Jewish, definitely Jewish, rabbis interested and knowledgeable in the field. If you don't understand what I'm saying, then it's not for you. Turn it off. They say it's confusing. What is confusing is when you spread misinformation. What is confusing is when you conflate the different ideas because you don't know how to learn. What is confusing is when you make it confusing. The Torah is difficult to study. When we establish the precedent that the Raavad is the halacha, what is confusing about that? Nothing. Only when you say there are other opinions. There's no other opinions. The Raavad is the halacha. There are other halachas, other issues. The question is there a kosher ben Noach path of Ger Toshav today without Jubilee that gets him close to God? Yes, it's called the halacha of the Raavad. There's nothing to confuse about that. Then you say, what are his halachas? How does he do it? Can he wear tefillin? Can he get an aliyah to the Torah? The answer is no, 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 yes, yes, no, 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 yes. He has to be with his community, which we already said. He has to be normal. We don't suggest doing anything over the top. No, he cannot get an aliyah to the Torah. The Raavad says he should not wear tefillin. Some will say he could. I'm not going to suggest he can. That's between him and his rabbi. If he is a kosher ben Noach, Ger Toshav of today, that means he has a rabbi in a community that he works with, and he is growing with Hashem, and his soul's interest is what is the best interest. It is only the Gerim Grurim in the Midrash that are told will come in the end of days barging their way in with their tefillin and tzitzit on their belt loop. Some say there's one type of goy. No, there's not one type of goy or one type of Gentile. There's many types that we've seen. There's not a dogma to it. Today I'm on the level of a Ger Toshav. Yesterday I was on the level of an almost olam. Then I was a chassid. No, there's no such thing as I was or a status. There are terms of where you are, who you are, how we can relate to one another. The almost olam are like the Americans that say we stand with Israel. The Hasidic almost olam are the people at the time of the Holocaust that saved Jews because they love Jews. To go out from Mechasidic almost olam is to come into Ger Toshav. How you come into Ger Toshav, that's up to you. Either as a damager, as a slave, or a servant of God, the holy, straight way, non-slave, literally, but the godly soul. Some say, where does Kabbalah fit in? Kabbalah is a holy part of Torah. There's bad Kabbalah, and there's good Kabbalah. How do you know what's good in Kabbalah and bad Kabbalah? How do you know what's good seafood and what's bad seafood? How do you know what's good Mexican food and what's bad Mexican? How do you know? Stick around. Find out. Study. Ask questions. Kabbalah can be very treif. It can also be an amazing study. One type of Ger Toshav. There's not one type of Ger Toshav. I think for the best clarity of that, see the Rebbe Sikha 31. He clearly states there's more than one type of Ger Toshav. It is impossible to learn this material with one type of Ger Toshav. It is written explicitly in places. It's not happening. There's not one type. Rambam Yovel. Rambam Yovel that's your favorite card. That is the Yetzer Hara to this. It is an invention to be able to quickly stymie someone's growth. Someone comes with their tefillin on and seat on the belt loop and says, I'm a Ger Toshav. I say, great, wait till Yovel. You'll be amazing. Yovel is not the dogma. It's not the gospel. Right? It is a stipulation in an aspect of law. Is that the halacha? No. What's the halacha? Right. Thank you. A question that you ask all the time, can a Ger Toshav kosher be a 10th man in a minyan? We don't know. Right now we're trying to say that there is the halacha of the Raavad. Once we establish that and the nations are back and redemption happens, as you asked Rabbi Trachman yesterday, a whole new slew of halachas are going to come up. Can they be a 10th man? Can they get an aliyah? Can they wear tefillin? Can they put up mezuzah? Can they wear tzitzis? Can they wear yarmulke? Can they shecht? All of that will come. We're not there yet. So the answer to all those questions really is no. When the halachas are endorsed by all of Israel, we'll know. One synagogue might put up a sign, no Ger Toshav allowed here. Then another synagogue might say, yeah, we're pro Ger Toshav, we're pro. And then they'll have a whole civil rights movement. Free the Ger Toshav, we deserve to daven. Just like the women got their place on the wall. So come on back. Be a part of Israel, and then you can have your place in the world too, so to speak. That's not where we're at. We're trying to simply get the misinformation out of the way, get people to stop being slaves, stop wearing tzitzit in the belt loop, stop being mazikim, damagers, and be kosher holy people. Be the fourth house of Israel, like the prophecies say. Are there really arguments amongst the rabbis on this? Yes and no. Does anybody argue the halacha is like the Raavad? No. You should have known that. So what do they argue about? Details. Details of how does he become a Ger Toshav today? Does he need 3 guys? Does he need 3 guys to reject idolatry, but he takes the 6 laws on himself? Little details. They really don't change the grand scope of things. Right? We had a question, you and I, where the camera was going to be placed today, correct? Was there any chance that would hold us back from taping today's class? No. So we argued, didn't we? But it didn't make a difference in the question, is there or is there not a shear? Correct? Thank you. Does anybody support the position of Rambam servitude is the only halacha? No. Who's the halacha like? Thank you. Do we see the clear thread of the Raavad historically from the Rishonim, from the Chazal, taken up by the Achronim, Vilna Gaon, through the 20th century, particularly the Rav Moshe, the Grees, Chavetz Chaim, Rav Hutner, and the Rebbe, to name a few. Is that correct? Is this new? Is this Ger Toshav new? It goes back to Chazal, to the Chumash, to the Navi, Isaiah 56:3, to name a few. Can the non-Jew keep Shabbat like a Jew? No. Should they say the words, we keep Shabbat? No. The non-Jew, you can say, keeps the non-Jewish Shabbat, but even that's problematic for the word keep. How you word it is to make the whole difference. The non-Jew celebrates Shabbat. The non-Jew is happy on Shabbat. Whatever you need to do to convey the message, Ger Toshav, Krisus 9a, not like a Jew, not guarding malacha, not status, not keeping, not doing malacha. Deya, where does the big confusion come from? Very simple. Are there 2 Deyas here? Raavad and Rambam. What's the difference? Akum, Ger. Every time you have a forbidden, negative, derogatory thing about a non-Jew, understand it was Akum. When it was liberating and free and great and amazing, what was that? The halacha? Who?
Right.
Thank you. That's not what I was told. I'm sorry, that's what you were told. Pre-World War II, this was common knowledge. Everybody knew this that knew this. Today, for some reason, it's very not common. A lot of books were buried with the Zionism state, for particularly the Vilna Gaon books. They didn't want the Haredim to get involved with the Dati Lami. And we don't want Muslims showing up saying, "Hi, here's my Tudah, I'm a kosher Ger Toshav." We use them for the Shemitah, right? But it's not exactly a thing that this generation wanted to go endorsing just after the Holocaust. But we're coming out of that now. And before the Holocaust, this was common knowledge amongst the poskim. So where did it become messed up? Art scroll translations and translations. Why? I don't think it's malicious. I just think people don't know it. If you don't know it, you don't know it. It just became a thing in English. Who thought to translate Ger other than proselyte 20 years ago? Everyone was still in the churches. If everyone would have been here, it wouldn't have happened. Maybe when the Nazarites come, they're going to say, "Hey, why are you calling me a Nazarite? My name's Phil." Oh, sorry. I didn't know to check the Rashba and Masechta Nazir. Another dichotomy, slave Ger Toshav versus Raavad Ger Toshav. Right? I hate that word too. I'm sorry. That's why I'm against it philosophically. The valid day exists if you want to go that route. But that's why there's a valid halacha like who? That states that you do not need to sell yourself to Islam, slavery, servitude, Shabbos goy. It really doesn't even take hold until after the Jubilee, but if you want to sell yourself into it, hey, it's not binding, it's not literally slavery, but it's pretty close. Pretty close. It's actually called sachir, like a worker. Not cool. Therefore, there's a halakha like who? Who?
Raavad.
That allows you to hold your head up high with pride and dignity and serve God like a mensch. Misinformation is simply part of the game plan. When people are being damagers, they want to be slaves, they don't know inside, they're misinformed, that's not what I was told, I read Art Scroll. There is misinformation. Your job is to remove the misinformation, learn the truth, spread the truth. Why do we choose Ger instead of Noahide? The Ger is in the Torah, the Ger sees himself in the Torah. The Noahide is not the halacha like who? That is not a Noahide. That is a Ger. A Ger could be referred to as a Noahide. But a Noahide, and by the halakhic standards of the Raavad, really cannot be a Ger. Based on the distinctions people have drawn today themselves. I understand Noahide is an easier term, it's a more accepted term. But it's accepted on the slant towards servitude. Shabbos goy, idolater. The Ger halacha Raavad is 100% removed from there. Do you want to be given the meat or sold the meat? Who is the opposition? There's a nice little group on Facebook. They're on Facebook, but they're also in other places. That is the sole opposition to this thing. We are in agreement with the divine code on many issues of the 7 laws of Noah. Our 7 law premise is not counterproductive or against Noahide principles of even the servitude principles. We're not saying the Rambam doesn't exist and we poskin from Martians. We're not saying that. We are simply revealing the halacha of the Raavad. And the opposition, for whatever reason, doesn't acknowledge the halacha of the Raavad. But that is them. And that is without backing of any historical, contemporary, rabbinic, anything. Now, congregations will go by what they want. If you don't want to poskin like the Raavad, you don't have to. You can put up a sign that says, we don't poskin Raavad here, go away, we only take Ger Toshav slaves. You can even say that we don't really want this. That's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion of what they want and don't want. You've told me many times, this is a hard mitzvah. Love the Ger is not simple. We have a very challenging history. There, the damagers come in with tzitzit and the belt loop, and it's confusing, which can cause animosity and bias and bigotry and miscommunication and misinformation, emotional tsar. I'm aware of that. But there's a mitzvah to love the Ger. It is always. And there are those out there amongst the Jews who are taking their right to love the Ger and follow the halacha like the Raavad, our God-given right. And there are people who want to be Ger and take their God-given right. And they're coming together, not only now, this has happened all through history. The Gula really is when that rift is sealed forever. So there's always been a bit of opposition, even spiritually, in making this happen. For whatever reason, the slave wants to say he is it. The Ger Toshav says, hey, that's pretty cool, but that's not me. There's a fundamental machlokes or argument. I don't yet know fully why this opposition is against the halacha of the Raavad. It's very complicated learning, so I don't know if it's an inferiority complex. I'm not sure. It's unfortunate, and it is our goal to make peace and shalom, that the shita of slavery can make peace with the shita of the Raavad. If the slave wants to be unslaved and become Raavad, God-serving, God soul-loving person, More power to you. Again, I guess it's maybe personal preference. I'm not sure. Do you want to be given the meat or sold the meat? We are not against anybody. We support the truth of Torah. We only can hope that all people in the world will come to appreciate the whole Torah, and especially the not so shrouded halacha of the Raavad. It's not shrouded. It's just maybe hard to find, right? It's a hard to find thing, but it's there and it's open and with precedent. When you start to find Ger, we have time. When you start to get into Ger Torah, you will see Ger Torah is everywhere. Whether it is the slave Akum, that's one part of Ger Torah. Convert is another part of Ger Torah. Baal Tshuva Jews Ger Torah. Antoninus is a part of Ger Torah. Abraham, Jethro, Adam, Noah, Shem, Rechabites, Kenites, Yael, you name it. Ger is everywhere. If it's all Jewish on one side, turn left this way or that way, you will see it is universal at least 1 or 2 steps away every time. Every time. Why are there 2 Rambams? As I gave an example before in making Tevilos Kalim, when you dunk Kalim to a kosher, to the kasher and mikveh water. The Ron commentary says, I myself hold that it's from the Torah, but I think the Rambam is saying that it's rabbinic. It's a contradiction. How can he say 2 opinions on one Rambam? Because the different views in Torah can allow, if I teach this class now, you actually have the right to say, I think Rabbi Katz said this. You understand? If I were to say, all slave Ger Toshavs must become Ger, God's soul, the Raavad, and then I, Chas v'Shalom, went away. They would say, look what Rabbi Katz said. It's explicit. You were here. You would say, I was there, and I heard him say, you should, but you don't have to. There would be 2 opinions of what Katz said. What I literally said, and what you believe is in mashma, implicit in my words. Now, you can't just make it up and say, I think the Rambam says we should all go to Mexico. It has to be based in the learning and historically with precedent. When I say historically, I'm talking about the flow of the Deya of halacha. Lahid Gayer, the Rashba, all language Lahid Gayer to become Ger can become either Ger convert or Ger Toshav. And the last thing I'm going to say, ready for this? If you've liked this class, I hope this brings clarity to you. Did this bring clarity to you? Did we finish the deal? Hopefully. And I'll close on this. If you have any issue that you are experiencing, not that you want to trafe up the learning. Why? Because the halacha is like who?
Raavad.
That's right. So we're not questioning the Raavad. We're saying if you have experienced any misinformation or seen any dodgy behavior, email me. I will address it every time. Story hasn't changed. 5 years we're teaching this. It's the same set of circumstances. There are different types of services of God. Servants, slaves, damagers, holy kosher looking to get clarity of their soul. Okay? Again, I'm calling that the Raavad, right? The holy Ger Toshav, what you want to call that in practical terms. There's no word for it. There's also no word for the Ger Toshav slave, right? And I prefer not to call them slaves. The bottom line is, from the Torah, it spoke its message. The oral Torah gave us the vessels. The written writings dealt with those vessels. Today, those vessels have materialized in a people, and here we are. We're looking at people. And rather than say, you're from the Chassidim Amos Olam, you're from the Amos Olam, you're an Amalekite, you're Erev Rav, you're Gerim Grurim, don't do that. Just say, where is this person holding in Torah? He's got seat on his belt loop. My friend, you're making it confusing. Do tshuva. I really don't want you here. It's not for you. This is a kosher minyan. Have a nice day. This guy's not Jewish, but he understands what to do. He's working on himself, yada yada. As I say in my my Rabbi Miller classes, my Vilna Gaon classes, thank you for listening. Be well.